Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Introspection. I'm your host, Amy Lindner Lesser, and today I've got a few things on my mind. In the past, I've talked about the fact that there are tons of types of grief, that we can grieve over losses and deaths, as well as other life changes, and the fact that we can grieve over happy things or supposedly happy things. Basically, grief is a very normal and natural emotion when a significant relationship that we have ends. So, in addition to having relationships with people and our pets, we have relationships with our jobs. We have relationships with our families, our home. Um, and this being June, which just blows my mind that we're already in June, um, graduation time. And I was having a chat with one of my friends this morning, and she was telling me about her niece. Her niece just graduated with a PhD or a doctoral degree and was moving to start her new job. And her niece was saying that she had a lot of conflicting emotions and she didn't know if it was okay. She didn't know if her feelings were normal. And my friend, being very bright and having listened to me for a while, said, "Of course it's right. It's very normal. You're leaving 20 some odd years of living your life in a certain way." She was moving out of her parents' house for the first time permanently. She had moved to go to school other places, but always would go home in the summers or during vacations. Her whole way of doing things was changing. And my friend very astutely told her, "You can cry because you're leaving all that. You're losing the security of your nuclear family, your parents, your siblings, the physical place of the room that you grew up in, of your community, the friends that you made from preschool time all the way locally. While you may not lose them completely, the relationships will change because you're all growing and you're moving and you're starting new friendships and new relationships. It's okay to be sad about those things. And it's also okay to feel excited and happy over the wonderful changes that are happening in your life. You are starting a new job and new experiences. You're going to meet new people. You're going to have a new group of people at work, a new social life, and it's all okay. So I want everybody to think about that. The fact that we may know people who are graduating. Add a little bit extra grace and compassion when interacting with them. They may not realize that they are grieving. If you can help them by identifying those emotions, that would be wonderful. Because the one thing that I know for sure is when we try to ignore our feelings, whether we're pushing them down or thinking that they're not valid, or we're listening to other people saying, "Oh, you're starting a new job, you're starting a new life and a new career. It's exciting." They're forgetting the fact that the other things are changing. So give them a little bit more grace. Help them identify what could be a very confusing time for them and let them know that grief is normal. It's very normal. The other kind of grief that I want to talk about today was another friend who is navigating the journey of her husband's illness. Her husband has stage 4 cancer. They both know that it's going to end at some point. Nobody knows for sure. And she talked about anticipatory grief. And that's something that I unfortunately know very well because I thought I was dealing with my grief in a healthy, good way. And I can tell you that the way I experienced anticipatory grief is not the way that's best for people to do. I thought that because I was going through my husband's illness and knew deep down that he wasn't going to survive the illness, not that any of us get out of here alive. We know, deep down, we know that everybody dies. The difference is when somebody is given a diagnosis and a prognosis, we start to live with the idea of that death being more real, more tangible. And we start with anticipatory grief thinking about how we will go on, how we will deal with life after the death, after the life quake. What that does is it takes us out of the present moment. And I've learned that it's so important to live our lives in the present, to not be anticipating, to not be thinking so far ahead. We're often taught, you need to think ahead, you need to plan ahead. And while that's true to a certain extent, what's also true is we really don't know exactly how anything is going to happen. That when we're too far ahead of ourselves or ahead of our lives, we're coming up with scenarios that may be fear-based, that may be so unreasonably false, they may be outlandish and cause more fear. When we live in the present, there's really, it's very hard to be afraid because what we're afraid of is what's supposedly going to happen in the future. And we don't know that. We can't predict other than eventually we will die.
Life quakes or life transitions and the aftershocks that follow are something we all experience. A life quake can stem from the heartbreaking grief that arises from the loss of a loved one or the disorientation felt when life suddenly shifts due to the loss of a job, relationship, identity, or health challenge. Learning to navigate these transitions with mindfulness, grace, and self-compassion is the key to finding your way back to joy, happiness, and inner peace. Advanced Grief Recovery Method Specialist and Certified Life Transition Coach Amy Lindner-Lesser, MSW, expertly supports clients to navigate their life quakes and transitions with warmth, kindness, and grace. Learning to accept support as you navigate your way through the aftershocks is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. Learn more at introspection.com. That's introspection.com.
Doctors are not gods. They can't pinpoint exactly when somebody will pass. And so to spend the time that we have that's now in the present, worrying about when something is going to happen robs us of the present moments. It robs us of the beautiful memories we can create while that person is alive, while we're alive. So this friend of mine posted something on Facebook this morning, and I loved the analogy that she used. She used the analogy, now think back about when you were a child, and if you have memories of being on a swing set and sitting on the swing and swinging, and you'd move your feet and pump to get higher and higher. And oftentimes, what would happen would be you'd go a little too high, and one of the legs of the swing set would lift out of the ground. Do you remember that happening? I sure do. I remember my stomach dropping and the fear. And she said for her, that's what anticipatory grief is. It's the swinging too high and the leg lifting out of the ground, that she's loving the swinging. The whole part of that activity is relaxing. It's being present. And then when it lifts, she's no longer in the present. She's in the what ifs. To me, it's a great example of why we need to make the most of every moment in the present tense. Stay in the here and the now. When I was going through Steve's illness, it was almost as if I had already started living my life as a widow, even though he was still alive. I was putting myself in the thinking of how I would do something when he wasn't around, instead of sharing my thoughts with him, instead of sharing a wonderful or not so wonderful meal with him and the conversation that we could have had, experiences that we could have had or we did have, I could have looked at differently. Where I said, I don't suggest people do what I did, is that after he did pass, I thought I had dealt with my grief. I had anticipated it. I knew it was happening. And I tried to move forward too quickly. I was 2 days away from being 43. He was 48. And I was like, I've got kids who are 11 and 14. I need to go forward. I have a business I have to run. And I really didn't take the time to feel my feelings and to reflect on our life together and the memories. And because of that, I believe I didn't allow myself, because I didn't allow myself to stay in the moment, I also couldn't go into the future. For a period of, I'm going to say, 8 to 10 years, I wasn't aware of dreaming. I was so worried about putting one foot in front of the other and not letting things fall down that I had created this pyramid without a strong foundation. And once I started to realize that, and when I realized that I did want to keep going on, and I knew that it would never be the same. And what I finally figured out after lots of work and reflection and coaching, I realized that I was in control, that I would not be the same person as I was when I was married and before Steve died. And it didn't mean that I would be less. It also freed me to start to think about, what did Amy want? But all of that is after. Get through the here and now, get through the things you have to do, the legal, the financial, get through the emotions. We need to, I have a vision in my head of a soldier crawling through mud on their belly and like going through muck. There's a lot of muck to go through. There's a lot of emotions to go through. Feel them all. Stay in the here and the now, in the present. And then slowly the present does change. And you're not anticipating anymore. The person or event has happened. And then you start and eventually get to a point where staying in the depression and the sadness becomes heavier and more than what you want to do. So the pain of not changing becomes greater than the pain of changing. So think about that. The things that I want to leave you with, or almost leave you with, are grief can happen with happy occasions. Think about the people, the children, the grandchildren, the neighbors, people who are graduating, who are probably not aware that they're grieving their prior life. And even if they're adults who are graduating, someone who may have gone back to school as an adult, maybe their job is staying the same. However, they're changing. They're going to grieve. And anticipatory grief will happen. It's normal. Keep yourself grounded in the present moment. Enjoy every moment that there is. And with that, Father's Day is coming up. I don't know if you have a father who's alive, if you have a father that you have a relationship with. It's the same advice I gave with Mother's Day. Honor the person if you can. There are many people who have surrogate fathers, maybe not formally. If you don't have a father that you had a good relationship with or a relationship with, think about who might have been that surrogate father for you. Find a way to honor them, to bring back a memory that will make you smile, whether it's flowers, whether it's a barbecue, whether it's a special type of movie or a walk. What can you do to bring a good memory back into your life? And on that, thank you for listening. We'll see you again in 2 weeks. Remember, I love you. Thanks. If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner Lesser.